So we are still in the middle of the pandemic. It's actually currently getting worse because people won't stay inside and won't wear their masks. So I am still furloughed and not doing much of anything else. And I decided today to make a plague doctor mask, which I'm sure you've seen going around the internet. They're very popular at the moment, given the moment that we are currently living in. Funny thing, plague doctor masks probably were never actually used. They're more of an aesthetic thing that first popped up like 100 years after they were reported to have been used. So this is going to go along with that in never actually being used and mostly just being for fun. I decided to make mine cute because why not? So I downloaded a pattern from an Etsy store whose name I've forgotten, but I will put a link to in the box thing. My brain just turned off for a second. You know what I mean. So that'll be down below. It was super cheap. It was less than $3. So I love downloading patterns from small creators on Etsy. So I definitely recommend this one. I've not used this company before, so we'll see how it goes, but it looks relatively simple to do. I'm using craft foam. It calls for EVA foam, but EVA is really expensive, especially like the cosplay specific stuff. And this is meant to be sort of a lark. So I decided not to shell out for it. I think it'll go fine. We'll see. It might look terrible at the end. And then I'm going to paint pretty flowers on it because why not? I've chosen a couple of flowers. Sort of the lore behind these masks is that plague doctors would fill the beak with like sweet smelling flowers and herbs and stuff like that because they were trying to prevent miasmas, or basically bad smells, from bringing the plague to them, because we didn't have germ theory at that point. So the idea was that diseases were spread by bad smells or miasmas. So a protection of good smells like flowers and dried herbs could protect you from the plague. Obviously that wasn't true. But that was the idea. So I thought I'd put some sweet smelling flowers on the outside of my plague mask as a sort of a little homage to the miasma theory of disease. So I'm going to get started first by cutting out and taping together the pattern, and then transferring that to the foam, and then putting it all together. So let's get started. I went into this armed with pickled popcorn from Trader Joe's, a pale ale, I think. Actually, no, that's an amber ale, and water. It was a very weird combination, and not all of the food you will see me eating throughout this day as I work, but it got me through. Also, both my father and my husband went in to steal some popcorn from me, thinking that it was either regular popcorn or caramel corn, and were very, very sad when it was actually pickle flavored. But it is one of my favorite things that Trader Joe's sells, and they only sell it during the summer, so I am happy to eat it. In an effort to properly plug this Etsy shop, I want to go ahead and tell you that their name is Fingerprint Props on Etsy, and they are awesome. This pattern only cost me $2.95. It fit together perfectly, was really easy to assemble, and it made a lot of sense. Easy to put together, taped it up no problem, and again, it was really inexpensive. The shop owners seemed lovely. I didn't have to interact with them too much, but they seemed more than willing to help out, and I always appreciate that in an Etsy store. So again, that store is called Fingerprint Prop.
Yeah, I'd say you got it all right. If it's wrong, I don't want to be right. I'm still thinking about you.
Okay, so I have cut all of the pieces out of the foam. My plan is, because the instructions called for 5mm EVA foam and I used 2mm craft foam, I cut double what I need of everything, and I think that'll help me form it. So my basic plan is to form one with one layer, and then use my spray glue that I bought, my spray E6000, to glue a second layer to it and basically reinforce it, because you don't want to use a heat gun and do all that fancy stuff that you need with EVA foam. But this is a display piece. I'm not going to be wearing it to cosplay or anything like that, so I'm not too worried about its rigidity. So I'm going to build the first piece and then go back in and reinforce it. My mother is going to be horrified to see me trying to open that rubber cement with my teeth. I did end up using the scissors. Sorry, Mom. Anyways, as I was going through this project, I realized that rubber cement was not going to cut it and just hold together on its own. So I went in with the rubber cement and let it dry as you're supposed to, and then went back and taped all of the seams together. By taping the seams together, I found that it just stayed together much more easily, and I could let the rubber cement dry on its own without having to worry about it shifting or falling apart on me. So that's where you can see me using that blue painter's tape. The tape didn't damage the foam at all. I was a little bit worried about that, but I knew that at this point it didn't matter if it didn't stick together anyways. But the tape did work perfectly, and I was able to make those seams stick. Okay, so the mask is all constructed. There was a moment there where it was going very badly, but I actually am pretty happy with it right now. I have it all taped up while the glue dries, but obviously that'll come off before I start painting. I just want to give the rubber cement some time to dry in the correct shape. I actually think the double layer worked out really well, way better than it had any right to, because it's sort of putting that second layer on made the shape the correct shape, because for a while it was all concave instead of convex and looked terrible, to be perfectly honest. So while this guy is drying, I'm going to work on the flowers that I'm going to be putting on the outside. So my plan is I bought accidentally this EVA or this craft foam that has a sticky back on it, which obviously won't work for the mask itself, which is why I bought the other foam. But what I was thinking is I can do flowers on this and sort of use a clay sculpting tool to do impressions of the flowers and then paint over those to make it a sort of 3D effect. And then I will cut the flowers out and stick those onto the painted mask. So it's a 3D effect on the mask as well. So I'm planning on doing jasmine, bluebells, peppermint, and then roses and possibly poppies, just because I like poppies. Sticking poppies into your mask would get a completely different effect, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to paint the buds on this 3D form, and then I'll paint the stems onto the actual mask. So again, it's got the two different levels effect, and I'm going to do it hopefully in a sort of botanical illustration style. That's my plan. I love that illustration style. I think it's super pretty. I'm definitely not quite that artistically talented to paint those flowers perfectly, but I think I can get that kind of watercolory idea of the botanical illustrations, which I think will just go well with that plague doctor mask idea. So we will see. I'm going to get to that while the mask dries. I had originally planned on using those clay tools to create impressions in the foam, but then I found as I was using this fine tip Sharpie that it was creating an impression all on its own and actually lended itself to that sort of sketched out illustration, botanical style of illustration that I was going for. I am one of those people that absolutely adores color, but generally likes to work with a rather limited color palette. So even though I have bright reds and oranges in this mask, I also have a cohesive color palette by using the same tones in different ways. So the shadow in the poppy that I'm working on at this moment is the exact same red as in the rose that I have finished up in that corner. And then going into the blue of the bluebell, I highlight that with some of the pink tones that are found in my peppermint flowers as well as in that rose. So even though blue creates a nice pop of color and is a contrasting color to the orange and the poppy, it all seems very cohesive and like it should be on the same piece together. flowers are all done. I'm going to leave them to dry while I peel the tape off of the mask, expose all of the seams, and start painting this guy. I'm going to make it hopefully look like a white leather is my plan, maybe like a tan leather. So I'm just going to do a base coat of tan color and then do a little bit of weathering in the seams. I'm going to leave most of the weathering for once everything is on, all the flowers and the stems are all painted on, and then I'll do the rest of the weathering. But I thought, I would just do a little bit of base to start, give it a little bit of dimension. So that's what I'm gonna do next. The tan I decided to use for these masks is the exact same paint that I used as a skin tone on the Coraline dolls I made of myself and my partners in a different video. Basically because waste not, want not, right? I am trying not to keep too many craft supplies together in my parents' home because I will be eventually moving on. So I had this tan color and the brown that I mixed with it to make Cody's skin slightly darker than Janie's and mine. And I used those as the base color for the mask and then the color for weathering the mask.
Nobody's gonna hold me back now. Slow down. I just gotta.
A magical charcuterie board appeared, which is great because I, at this point, had worked well into dinner time. You can't see it, but my family has now surrounded me and we are chatting as I draw in the stems and leaves of the flowers. I sort of threw the flowers on rather haphazardly. I went from biggest to smallest, so starting with that rose that's right on the forehead, just to get an idea of where things need to be placed, and then decided to fill in any blank spots with the stems and the leaves, working with reference photos that I had used to paint the flowers in the first place. I then went in with a green paint that I had made mixing the blue from the bluebells in with just a really bright sunny yellow. I didn't want a true evergreen color, which would have been more accurate to these flowers, but I wanted something a little bit brighter because I was worried an evergreen would just pull it down and make it too dour, and that is the opposite of the idea for this mask. So they ended up pretty bright and cheery, and I'm actually really, really happy with that.
Still thinking about you, thinking about you. Yeah, I'm still thinking about you. You, I can't stop thinking about you. I'm still thinking about you. Still thinking about you.
Time for a cheeky wrap up. I'm really proud of this. I am super, super proud of myself with this guy, considering I've never made any sort of cosplay mask or anything like this from foam. I didn't use the intended materials, and the paint style is not something that I'm super comfortable with. I think it turned out awesome. It does not breathe, obviously. I don't think wearing it to a con would be really hard. I think you'd have to have an option to take it off. Maybe even putting it on a mask or something. I think you could do a really cool fairy princess plague doctor cosplay out of this if we're ever allowed to go to cons again, which I think would be really, really cool. But obviously there's a pandemic, hence the mask, so cons aren't going to be a thing for a while. So this is just art, and as just art, I am really, really proud of it. As far as things I could have done differently, I think the proper foam definitely would have worked better. Some of the seams are not terribly pretty, but I mean, the outside is pretty, so that's what's important, right? We can all be ugly on the inside. I think stepping up my painting skills is always something I'm working on, so that's definitely always something to improve on. But overall, this is amazing, and for a $3 pattern, such a deal. Awesome. I definitely would recommend this pattern, especially if you properly follow the instructions and do it as you're told instead of just winging it how I did. But yeah, I'm super happy with this, and it's going to live in my parents' house somewhere, and I'm really happy with that. So thank you guys so much for joining me. on this little journey with this mask. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like and a subscribe. I'm going to be doing more stuff like this. This channel is obviously very, 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 very new. So any support that you can give me definitely helps at this point. So sharing, liking, subscribing, all of that fun YouTube stuff, please do. If you want to see more of me and more of weird projects like this. Thank you guys. Bye.
I'm still thinking about you.